Hey everyone, my name is Kristen Wolford, and I am a digital artist.
I'm Amanda Pinkbodipakia, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist.
My name is Shaniqua Gay. I am a multimedia artist.
My name is Melissa Wong, and I'm primarily a painter.
My name is Fabian Dominic Williams, first of his name, and I'm an artist.
My name is Chioma Imani Hall. I am a Black queer illustrator.
My name is Kaylee Patton, and I do paintings, installations, and public murals.
Good evening to everyone. I'm Floyd Hall. Welcome to Sidewalk Talk, powered by Midtown Alliance. It's part of the Heart of the Arts programming. This is a discussion that we've been really looking forward to for quite some time. As you saw in the opening, we have some of Atlanta's, best and most interesting artists as part of this conversation and part of this experience. And what we really wanted to do in this conversation is really connect artists to place and to humanity and to each other, quite honestly. And in addition to that, we have a very special panelist, Gene Kansas, who is creative in his own right. And we're having a discussion that really just sort of, kind of breaks down hopefully some of the barriers that we kind of get when we have artist talks, and really have a moment to just connect to one another. So instead of doing the typical opening round robin sort of introductions for everyone, we're going to just have the folks here on this panel discussion sort of just give their own Midtown moment / memory, whether it be a favorite place, favorite event, moment, Midtown, building, anything that sort of speaks to nostalgia and Midtown. So I will recommend someone to Amanda.
My favorite Midtown memory is in the kitchens of the King and I. It's this tiny little neighborhood spot that was really popular in the 90s, owned by my dad, that really brought Thai food to Atlanta. And it sat in Ansley Mall, and I kind of grew up there. So all of the spices and the noises and the different textures and colors kind of really infused into my consciousness, and you see it in my art.
Love that. Chioma.
Oh, okay. My favorite Midtown moment has to be just going to the art supply store here. Coming to the Midtown area has always been a transitional part of my experience, whenever just living in Atlanta and stuff. And so it's always the same people, always good stuff. So yeah, that's mine.
I could tell when you said art store, all the artists just like nod their heads like, yeah, everybody kind of had the same like reaction. Shaniqua Gay. Come on down.
Price is right. I have several, so it's hard to like pick one. But one that currently does not exist anymore is Rio Mall. Rio Mall was over off of Piedmont, and it was a experimental mall, if you will. But my mother worked at a photo imaging company called Mizell, and Rio Mall was right across from there. So where we currently have the Publix and Walgreens on Piedmont, that is where Rio Mall used to be. And we used to go over there to get lunch and to eat. And it was just, just a true vibrant memory. A couple of other ones would be Mix, as well as Colony Square. And I'll stop there.
I love those memories. Shaniqua, I do recall Rio Mall. I'll add my little bit of Midtown memory. I just want to go back in time to the intersection of Peachtree and 10th Street when there were clubs, like real for real clubs deep into Midtown. You got Velvet Room, you got Vision. Right. This is just a whole different Atlanta than we kind of feel now, but I think it sort of helps set the vibe for what sort of evolved into Atlanta's entertainment sort of dominance over the past quarter century. But those clubs with just the traffic, like it was like for real, like downtown vibes all over the place. So I look back on those moments when I was, in my younger days, kind of, out here in the streets. Don't tell my mama. But yeah, so Next on the list, Melissa.
Yeah, when she almost said she came here to get supplies, that is very relatable. I come to the Blick all the time. I think that was my one connection to actual people during the pandemic, early pandemic. I'm pretty new to Atlanta, so I'm going to talk about a kind of recent memory. And that was going to see the Julie Moretti show at the Hive with my husband and my friend Jamal Barber. And just standing in front of those paintings and realizing just how much more incredible they are in real life versus seeing them on a screen. Great experience.
Gene, Kansas. I know, Gene, you have some great Midtown memories from your days here in Atlanta. So if you could think about, a place or a space, just what kind of jogs your memory when you think about Midtown?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's fun to hear everyone else's because it's bringing me back. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you just fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a good start. So I moved here in '95. It was like the year before the Olympics, and there was this raw energy, like it was gonna happen, and the world was coming here. And I lived in Midtown, and it was still like really pretty raw around there. I mean, it was like Cypress Street was like for, kind of drugs and prostitution, honestly. But you could see like things changing, and there was this undercurrent of the arts and energy and spoken word. And but I chose two kind of very different moments that were both like incredibly like large and also surreal. And the first was the first year I was here, Freaknik. And Peachtree Street was just packed. You couldn't even move. And I was like at Brookwood Station, right on the Midtown Buckhead border. And it just went and went and went. And I decided to walk from my apartment up. And I saw these guys hanging out of a limousine, just having the best time ever. And they were handing out their mixtape. So I thought, but it wasn't a mixtape. It was Outkast, and it was their first album. And I just I couldn't even believe it. And then in looking back, I believe it less and less. It was just one of those moments. And then 20 years later, also on Peachtree with Snowmageddon, there's no one except a single ice skater.
Yeah,
And those are two big Midtown Atlanta moments for me.
You can never go wrong with a Freaknik reference, Gene. So thank you for bringing Freaknik into the conversation. I feel like this is a proper Atlanta conversation now that we have Freaknik entered into the space. So thank you for that.
I approve this message.
Yes, Freaknik. Fabian, we can hear you now. Thank you. Come on in.
Yeah, all right. Native breathing all hard on the background. She ran up here. Yeah, man. I was saying, Floyd, you kind of stumbled upon my moment. I used to go to Kaya every Friday, and when I would come out of Kaya, past Earwax Records, and I would stop at this place, this little pit barbecue pull-up joint called Baller Q. I'd get me some ribs or a burger or something like that. And then we would just kind of cruise down Peachtree because, everybody used to just cruise on Peachtree up to Buckhead, because Buckhead didn't close until 4 a.m. There was a bunch of clubs over there. We just saw everything, man. It was dope. Atlanta back in 2000 was extremely dope. If you was young, and that was also the time of one of the last, actually no, that was 97, the last real Freaknik. So yeah, man.
I think the last real Freaknik needs to be the name of a documentary or something, really to chronicle, a moment in time in Atlanta culture. But I think you sort of hit on a lot of just between, your memories and Gene. I think we sort of just hit on a lot of the impact that the culture really has had on Atlanta's, growth and evolution. Because from a built environment standpoint, all the, the actual spaces that were there. You mentioned Earwax, which was like a legendary record shop, all of the sort of club spots, just everything that kind of felt organic and normal all at the same time. Back during that time, it always gives me good vibes. Kaylee.
Yeah, so I was a Atlanta transport back in 2013, and I actually landed in Midtown because of my grad school there. And I really have a lot of memory just walking around Midtown, which actually is kind of basis of my mural back here. And because I was a Chicago's transport, seeing things blooming in March was just unbelievable to me. And then starting with redbuds to dogwoods and just on and on and on. And it was just, for me, Atlanta is just a city that just is blooming, and starting back in 2013 and looking back at 2021, just the amount of change. And for you guys who've been here since the 90s, you guys are like, this is crazy. For me, who's been down there for 7 years, just that change itself was just amazing to witness. So a couple other things, like I love walking to cafes like Momonoki, it's a must, as well as Dancing Go, and also Colony Square, like Shaniqua has mentioned. I'm doing art installations there. So yeah, it's been great.
Love that. Yeah, I think one of the big attractions, that Midtown has had to me is that really downtown, but really like the Midtown areas that you can walk and sort of get around to different vibes just throughout Midtown. If you're just willing to kind of get out and just kind of give yourself that bit of freedom to just roam. I enjoy roaming around Midtown. And as we sort of, wrap this sort of intro portion up, Kristen, who is reporting live and direct from NOLA, tell us what's on your mind when it comes to Midtown and sort of reflecting on just like whatever vibe is kind of still for you.
Yeah, I mean, when I got this question, I really put a lot of thought into it. I didn't really realize how much of a connection I actually do have to Midtown. So I'm from here. I was born, I'm not a Grady baby, I'm a Crawford Long baby. So I was born like right there on Emory. I'm in Midtown. And I grew up in the suburbs though. So a lot of times I would just pass through, like honestly. It wasn't until I started like, going out on my own and doing my own thing or whatever, that I started really building some deep ties creatively. So, I mean, I have tons of memories, but honestly, the biggest memory for me would be the Fox Theater. It's like a scene I replay in my head like all the time. One of the first times I met like some really cool activists here in Atlanta. Most of us are still cool to this day. And it was a die-in. Like, I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but it's the concept of like, you're doing a protest against police brutality, and you're physically like laying down on the ground so that people can see what that looks like, right? So I have this memory seared in my head. This is the first time I did anything creatively that had to do anything with activism at all. And that's like my Midtown moment right there. So it was that was a huge moment for me. That was like back in 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. And like I said, I mean, that moment in time is just like frozen in my head, and it comes out of my work even now. Like the lingering after effects of that is still something that's very present for me. And it is it's a very beautiful, there's something very beautiful about the poetry of it all, and the way it's influenced me. And it's also, the flip side of this, the reality of like kind of the conflict I feel like I have with Midtown in some ways. Like it's almost a tale of two cities type thing. As far as the energy that I feel from it, it's like I've had my most amazing opportunities for Midtown, and then also Midtown grounds me in a way that nowhere else can. And so that memory for me in particular is the one that like I always go back to.
I think that's a great way to frame it, because I think that, you mentioned earlier at the beginning of your comments how kind of had just always kind of, flown through Midtown. And I think a lot of us, when it comes to Atlanta's car culture, we're driving everywhere. for those of us who have that luxury, Midtown, we're kind of just passing through. And you sort of experience it through the windows of your vehicle. And so I think one of the things I would love to kind of get from you all is, you know, in being in this moment, getting to create some of this work where you're sort of like observing Midtown from like eye level, ground level, you know, observing the space, feeling the scale of yourself and the buildings and everything else. That's one of the things I really want, you know, to kind of get from you all, just having spent some time recently there. But, you know, to kind of maybe get us to that point a little bit sort of slowly to kind of like build up to that. I know that some of us here have spent only, you know, a short time here in Atlanta. Some of us have spent longer time here in Atlanta. I'm curious, with however long you've been tied to the Atlanta area, how have you seen Midtown change or grow in your sort of observation? And because you mentioned the Rio Mall, I'm going to ask Shaniqua Gay to give some perspective on watching Midtown evolve and grow. So what has that been like for you, to sort of see this evolution?
It's such a it's such a huge counter difference to the Midtown that I grew up with. You know, so even listening to you guys talk about the clubs, talk about Kaya, talk about Earwax, it was just really an accessible place that did not have what I would consider to be hierarchies, social hierarchies at that time. And, you know, it's just very much different than the space that I grew up in. And then, like, it's also a welcome growth. It's also a welcome change. Change is a good thing, right? And so while that is welcomed and beautiful, I do miss the old Atlanta. I'm team old Atlanta. But I do appreciate the growth and I appreciate the change that has happened here. Just over the past 5 years, the landscape has changed tremendously. The cityscape has changed tremendously. And so it's a beautiful thing to see and also kind of sad.
Amanda, I would love for you to kind of, you know, add some comments to that. I think just talking about your experience in your parents' like restaurant, and like I feel like that's like a very grounding experience with family, you know, in the Midtown footprint. How have you observed the growth of Midtown, even your own growth for that matter, but just sort of like observing growth? How would you add to that?
That's a great question. So yes, I'm born and raised in Atlanta, but I'd probably say I did most of my, you know, artistic growth and sort of, you know, activist growth actually in New York. But to comment on how New York is sort of like different and really how Midtown has shifted and changed is that I think when I was introduced to the arts in Midtown, sorry, my Siri is freaking out at the moment. I think a lot of the different disciplines for me were quite siloed. So I'm actually a trained ballerina as well. So my experience with the Fox Theater, you know, in the 90s was just like classical ballet, right? But I've seen sort of like this intermingling and dialogue between artists and between creative communities that have really grown over the years. And that's been incredibly beautiful to see.
Kaylee, you mentioned that you know, came from Chicago. And so I think that, you know, we all love Chicago for many reasons. I love the food a lot. But in sort of coming to Atlanta and putting down roots in this cultural community, you know, you've had a chance to observe growth in perhaps a bit of a shorter time span than some of the other folks in this conversation. But I would sort of just love your comments as a bit of a recent transplant still compared to some of the other folks.
Yeah, so the level of growth for me that I observed back in 2013 till now was just really great. Like, I mean, physically, just like what y'all have been saying, the buildings going up, but also the diversity and the different transplant, just like me, that came 7 years ago, has been pretty spectacular. Also, I mean, yes, Chicago. I mean, it's great. Lots of different neighborhoods, but it's very segregated. It's very divided. But in Atlanta, a lot more mingling and with this southern flair, and it just has been such an interesting place to grow because the city is growing, because the city is supporting the arts, because different people from different areas and walks of life are coming together. It just has this growing energy that I've really, really enjoyed, and that really helped me grow in a positive way as an artist, and also just yeah, looking forward in a very like a blooming way in some ways. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to go back to back here with Melissa and Chioma, because you all, for those who are watching this, you probably can't tell that they're in close proximity to one another in terms of actually space. So I definitely want to get you all to chime in on this, but also sort of the added context of just observing, you know, Midtown out of your window storefront there. Talk about your own witnessing to Midtown's growth, however long that you've been here, but you're sort of internalizing that with sort of being in your storefront, watching it sort of pass by you as you're creating work. Chioma first, and then Melissa.
Okay. Well, when I first moved to Atlanta, Midtown was the first area that I explored and felt really comfortable to explore. I really enjoyed the feeling of being anonymous, but everything being so walkable, where I had time to just process, reflect, and think about my goals while I was living here and stuff. I find that I've only been here maybe 2.5 years, maybe a little bit more, and it has been consistent in regards to just flow. But I do find that it feels like night and day when it comes to events like Atlanta Pride and stuff. And it's when there are a large gathering of people down here, it's amazing, fiery, energetic, communal, and just a happy space to be in and stuff. And so I feel like as I've grown as an artist, this is a space that still I find joy in exploring. There's still something new to always unpack, something new to explore and enjoy. And yeah, I feel like it's just a good space to process things. Mm-hmm.
I want to follow up with you, Chioma, because you mentioned the word anonymity,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that a lot of artists, well, a lot of people, you know, are trying to find ways to be seen and to sort of be present and featured. But I think that, you know, you mentioned kind of finding some solace in being anonymous, or finding something in that anonymity in Midtown. Could you say more about that and what that did for you or does for you?
Yeah, I am, as an artist, I think that a lot of my process involves being around people, but being quiet enough and observant enough to see what is going on around me, to ask questions, to see where I may or may not compare from one person to another and stuff. And so, like, I love being around people, and I love noise, but I don't always love saying things or being at the front of something. So it's like, whenever I'm going to explore space, I like to be just anonymous and to take hold of what I'm seeing, hold space for myself and others. And just take a moment of pause and stillness. And that's what helps me hear my voice the loudest. If that makes sense.
I like that. Melissa, I would love your contribution here to sort of give us some of your feelings on observing Midtown's growth, or even observing your own growth in Atlanta, and kind of how you think about any of that.
Sure. I came to Atlanta in 2018, so still pretty new to the city. And I came here for GSU's MFA program. So I'm not going to lie to you guys, I spend most of my time in the studio. It's basically where I sleep. But even when I first came to Atlanta, I did hear from so many people that Midtown is where all of the hustle and bustle is. So that's what it has seemed to be for me in these past couple of years. Always hearing about things happening, restaurants, places to go to. And I think that especially coming here from a bit of a smaller city, before this I was in Rochester, New York, and the downtown area there is so quiet compared to Midtown. Working here in the storefront has been probably the longest period of time that I've been in the Midtown area. And it's just been such an experience, seeing how many people go by my window every single day, just a constant parade. And, I feel like it really helped me get a better sense of like the character of this neighborhood, just watching people go by. And even now I can look outside of my window and I see someone just waved to me. I see a bunch of guys sitting out there eating lunch with their friends, and they've been here every day while we've been working in this space. And it's just an interesting way to observe the city.
And I do want to come back to that, because I think all of you all, whether you sort of lean into this or not, all of you and your work is now part of someone else's memories, of Midtown, as they're going along in their days and times. So you all are contributing to someone else's memories of Midtown. But I think we've heard a few different people to kind of talk about how Midtown has evolved in terms of, building and scale and just actually like structure. I think, Gene, this is why I would love to kind of, get you to chime in here. As someone who is creative, but with respect to the built environment and, real estate and development, like thinking about how spaces can be transformed and our ability to sort of transform those spaces. When you think about Midtown and its evolution, what do you see, or what sort of informs your sense of growth or change or nostalgia when it comes to how Midtown has changed?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a writer, and today, and when I moved to Atlanta, I was a content developer for TNT, and then I started doing feature and freelance writing, really, and covering the arts without really knowing much about the arts, except for that I liked them, but learning about people. Ultimately, my own personal evolution into real estate and development and cultural development still is very much rooted in being a writer and the telling of stories. And so I think about the history of Atlanta and its development. So starting from, the South and going up this ridge line north, the ridge line now known as Peachtree Street. And it's almost like this time capsule / gallery, if you will, of architecture. So some of you all have referenced like the Fox Theater, like Kristen, and the further south, the older the buildings. So the Fox was built in 1929, and then Colony Square has been mentioned, and that was built in the late 60s in 1968. Interestingly, where Chioma and Fabian are, which is historic commercial rows, some of the city's first retail, if not the city's first retail, was built in 1923. So it's kind of a bit of an outlier. And I remember when I moved here, the building that you all are in, Chioma and Fabian, it was like essentially, I mean, it was definitely vacant and boarded up. Our firm got this great opportunity to work on behalf of the Atlanta History Center, and really help revitalize that with their support. And it just, I know, it just makes me proud and moved to see the arts in these spaces. This evolution, not only of like the city itself, my own personal evolution, and like, you know, being able to spend tonight with you all and how wonderful that is, but also the kind of emotional evolution and the growing up of Atlanta as a city. And that we're here now talking about these places and spaces as, you know, essentially private spaces as public art. And to me, that's just fascinating and phenomenal. So it's such a seemingly like simple question, but the answer is just incredibly like layered because there's so much there. Just on a like funny note, in terms of growth, the more restaurants that have come to Midtown, the more I've seemed to be growing. That's kind of neither here nor there.
Yeah, Gene, thanks for that bit of history. You know, I think that Atlanta has always been a place where the old and the new, you know, are usually in conversation with one another. And there's always of those, you know, the old spaces, the new spaces, old Atlanta, new Atlanta, and like what that means and how that, you know, reflects in how the city evolves and what pace, you know, the pacing of that. Kristen, when you kind of gave some of your earlier comments, I think you were sort of speaking to, for you personally, you know, there was this sort of range of emotion that you kind of got when you started to like think about Midtown in terms of, you know, personal moments of like joy and like, you know, just really good feelings, but also like really impactful feelings that were really like serious. So I guess wanting to maybe kind of ask you how that kind of goes back to the art that you created in this current moment. What does it feel like for you, or what has it felt like for you to create in these storefront spaces, sort of in this sort of public, private sort of space that Gene was kind of talking about? Like, what has that been for like for you as you've like worked through your work?
I mean, it's been amazing for me, honestly. Like it blows my mind. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to bore you all with like the history, but like when I think back just like 2 years ago, you know, I had these visions in my mind of doing something kind of like this, and you know, just different things just kind of fell into place to where here I am right now, being able to show my work on such a huge scale, which is like just really an honor. I'm all about projection, so I had been projecting my work in different formats, but to be able to do it in this way publicly, like as a public art piece, is just way different, and it's great. Like I feel like the energy of Midtown, when I try to put like a name to it, I would say it's electric. Like I feel like at any moment, like you know, if you put two live wires together, like something crazy could happen. When I think about like all my different moments and my memories, that's kind of the one way I would describe it. And so for me and my work, like how I've gotten to this point, as far as like what I showed, I just wanted to make something that feels good, and it's very much so in contrast to a lot of my work, to be honest. A lot of my work is very like unflinching in some ways, is what I try to put out into the world. Like, you know, you might be seeing life one way. This is the way I see it. And as a Black person living in Atlanta and America, like all these different things that are going on in the times that we live in, like that's got to come out somehow. So what I felt like I hadn't done in my work was really explore the idea of just like Black beauty and happiness and joy and like that side of things. So this is a great opportunity for me to do that and to put that out. And I do feel like it's something that was, it's a piece that's going to be special to me.
Now, Fabian, you know, you have as much public art experience as anyone in this conversation. Just too many murals around Atlanta to list off. So for you, just thinking about public space, but in a different type of way, or public art in a different type of way, different type of space. what did you take from the sort of storefront experience of just, being street level, not up on a lift, sort of being around in that sort of like ground level space with the public? What did you take from that storefront experience in making this work?
Well, in every mural, can I hear me? First of all, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. In every mural project that I get, I'm always reverse engineering how people are gonna view my work and what I'm trying to say. So with it being in a in a window, I immediately thought of like New York during Christmas, how they have like the Macy's Day windows, the installations. Even though I didn't like put any like mechanical objects in there just because of the time crunch, I definitely went to thinking about making things move either in by light or by motion. So working with Nada, I told her to get these type of lights that glow. Not just like show black light, because I work with fluorescent colors a lot, but ones that like had like a fade on and fade off. So the idea is that I know when you put a light like that with fluorescent colors, they spread as the light gets brighter and they retract. So it can look like the piece could be breathing. So I think about, what would catch my eye if I'm walking by Midtown at night. You know what I'm saying? That's sort of how I've developed my kind of like approach to doing murals in general. It's like I look at like the corner as a website and my mural is a banner. What can I do to get you to notice my mural in like 3 seconds? Because that's how much time you have. If you're building a banner on a website, the industry rule is you get like 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds to get their attention before they just keep scrolling. And when you're like in the city and you got traffic lights and store displays, pretty people, and dogs, and trees, birds, I'm competing with all that. So I got to think about what can I do to get these people's attention. And luckily, me and my studio mate were sharing colors that were very vibrant. So it's like, kind of worked out.
Shaniqua Gay, I think that anyone who has driven past or walked past your window is instantly drawn in to what is present and what is presented to them. So I would love for you to not really talk about like the work per se, but just again thinking about that space that you have as a bit of a clean slate to work with, and like what did you want to like make people feel when they walk past your work or drove past your work?
Whether walking or driving, my hope was to get the viewer's attention, and most specifically through vibrant color, right? And I grew up in a large non-denominational church, but I also had family members who hosted church in storefronts. And so there is a correlation in reverence, in worship, and in praise for a storefront church, right? And so wanting to kind of get that same attention, get that same attraction, a type of colorful evangelism, if you will, right? Because more than just children, Southern women, and primitives love color, right? And so looking for ways, to attract my viewer and to draw them in through seduction and beauty, and to kind of hit them over the head with a message. Yeah.
We have a few more minutes before we sort of jump into some, peer-to-peer Q&A, because I feel like as you all have heard each other talk. I'm sure there are questions or just things that have popped up amongst yourselves that you may want to ask of your fellow artists, and I want to give you all a space to actually do that as well. But I did want to stay on this notion of memory and thinking about memories that you leave with others. And I know, Melissa, as you've been here, maybe the shortest time out of most people on the call, but just thinking also about what you want to leave people with in your work, just in thinking about how they interact with it and what you want to contribute to their particular moment in Midtown.
You know, working in Midtown, I noticed so many people were very curious while I was painting this. They would come and look in the window and they'd give me a little thumbs up. And sometimes I would step outside and chat with them. And it's a lot of people who aren't necessarily really into art in their day-to-day life. And I found that people really appreciated having this great inroad to seeing interesting contemporary artwork in their neighborhood without feeling like they had to go into a gallery space or a museum space, which can be kind of intimidating. You know, if you're not an artist, sometimes you feel like you don't know how to go in, how to act or whatever. And the comment I got the most, people were saying, oh, this is what the neighborhood really needs, which I thought was just great. And I guess that's what I want to give to people, just a little bit of what they need.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, I love that. So peer to peer, artist to artist, creative to creative, I would love to kind of leave and make some space for that kind of interaction between all of us in this moment right now. As we got to know each other, some of y'all may have already known each other well or have gotten to know, each other better through just this bit of dialogue. So would love to maybe sort of open it up for you all to kind of learn more about each other through questions. Well, I
got a fun memory. I got a fun memory for Shaniqua, actually. I don't think she even remembers this. She probably wouldn't remember. But this is one of those like what I say about like electric energy or whatever. Like I was interning at the goat farm.
All right, Kristen, watch yourself. Don't embarrass me in front of company.
No, embarrass you. This is a great story. Very inspirational, to be honest.
All right.
Nothing too crazy, don't worry. But yeah, I was interning at the Go Farm Art Center in Midtown. And they put me on an assignment to do open studios, right? And I remember going around, I was meeting just a ton of different artists. Walked in, saw Shaniqua. I think you were doing your TCP residency actually at the time. And, I got my little shots for whatever, but I remember like looking at you and your art and seeing like how much excitement there was around your work. And it really wasn't like that with with most of the other people that I was documenting. And I was like, dang, like, hey, she's on to something. Like, let me peep her. Let me see what she doing. I remember that, and I got some nice photos. I think I still have them somewhere. But yeah, this is one of those memories that I got of you that I think I've ever shared with you.
All right, well, I can double back. So when I was ending my TCP residency, and I think you yourself and a couple of other artists were invited to the TCP dinner. And I think that was at the end of maybe 2017. And being introduced to your work, because it was like on the walls. It was it was being projected on the walls, and that was probably hands down like the coolest engagement that I've had with a work of art in that way. Like it was really impactful. And so even more so now, astounding to be able to ride down Peachtree Street and seeing your work being projected is just, right? It's kismet, right? To be the dynamism that I saw at dinner, I get to drive down Peachtree Street and see that as well. Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah, it's crazy to me because Netta she just called me and she was like, hey, we got this dinner. Would you be willing to show your work? And I was like, yeah, all right, let's do it. And then I got there and she's like, yeah, I can see it. It's perfect. Like, put it right. Yeah, this whole thing. And I was just like, yeah, okay. And then when it was all said and done, I was like, damn, like this is what's up.
Right. It's fun being a part of Netta's vision, even though you can't see it, right? At the time.
Go
But
along.
to see things, yeah, come into fruition is always a beautiful thing. Yeah. Cool.
I've got a question. It's for you, Floyd. We're gonna flip the script a moment. I mean, you're such an incredible and talented producer and also interviewer and host. You've allowed us to share a lot of our stories. I'm curious what drew you to this work.
Oh wow. So this is gonna get really personal, but also just incredibly honest. So I am an only child. And so when you have it, and when you're an only child, lots of times you're like the people who you talk to are mostly adults because these are your parents' friends who come to the house, or they take you over to their house. And so you're always kind of like like around, but like not in the way, but just like around. And so I remember um, my my godfather, Sam Ellis Terrell, who was this incredibly like generous person who would just talk to me as like I'm 11 years old, but he would talk to me as if I'm grown, or at least let me like speak with no like uh no semblance of like, oh, a child shouldn't think like that. He was just very open and like talked to me as an equal. And so talking with adults a lot as a kid, I think really opened me up to just thinking about history a lot because they had stories and just gave me the confidence to just talk to people and just always be curious. And no question was ever a dumb question. And I say that and mention him because um, we just lost him a month ago to COVID, and that's been on my mind really heavy in the last few weeks because he never knew that that's why I kind of got into this space, but like he was very critical in giving me as a very young man, as a kid, really just the space to just talk and be very curious and expressive. So that's where it started. And I think with just learning about technical training here and there, you kind of pick up, the actual like production tips, but just the essence of conversation and being curious about someone, it was because of my godfather and just his willingness to just be like present for a a adolescent, a preteen, a teen, a young man, a man, like all throughout my entire life, just being present and just making space for to just Sunday dinners like every Sunday, from when I was a kid up until now. So just thank you for asking that question. Unexpected, but I appreciate it. But yeah, that's kind of how I got to where I got to.
I love it. Thank you for sharing with us. I mean, I tell my mom and told my dad, must have got it from somewhere. And it's really cool that we got to hear about, some of your inspiration and where it came from. And I also think that like on a bigger level for tonight, there's a lot of this provenance that will be born out of this conversation. And the promise of that's just really cool.
Very cool indeed. Any other questions? Like I just feel like you all's work is so interesting. There's so many colors. I think people mentioned color a couple different times. I think there's lots of that kind of happening with a lot of the work. I wanted to just leave space for just more curiosity. We do have a question from the audience who has kind of got this passed to me. And the question is this: feel free for any of you all to answer. For someone who was about to move to Atlanta, how do we get involved in the arts community? And, that's a very broad question, but I think for those who are looking from the outside in to Atlanta, I think sometimes it may feel kind of daunting to maybe approach and get into the arts community. But I would love for any of you all to maybe speak to how you got into it. If you didn't, some of you all entered into it via school. But I think whether it was an academic space or personal space, if you have any different ways to answer that question about getting involved in the arts community, the floor is yours.
I mean, I could speak to that. I had a similar feeling not too long ago. Like, how do I actually assert myself as an artist in Atlanta? I mean, I was in film school at one point and didn't feel like I was an artist at all in the community. To be honest, like I was making work, putting stuff out, didn't really like. It was like, how do I even get anybody to see it? Like, how do I get them to check it out? And I don't know. I went through like a lot of transition, I guess you could say, but I just got to a point where I was just like, I'm gonna just be open to like any and every opportunity. Like I started interning at Mocha GA, and I ended up I was doing like video archive work for them. I ended up meeting an artist who was like helping them with their a fundraising campaign, and then me and him started working together. And he was like, "Hey, you know how to do this? Do you know how to do this? Can you do this? Can you do this?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I'll try it." I made some work for him. Shout out to Masood. I made some work for him, and he was like, "Man, this is dope." And honestly, like that really put me on the trajectory of like, okay, let me keep going in this direction. You know, I'm working with somebody, I'm collaborating with somebody, like what I'm doing. Let me just keep doing it more. And so the more I, was working with him, and the more I was just like opening myself up to other opportunities, and I started interning at the goat farm. Like, I really just tried to surround myself and put myself near people that I knew were doing things that I thought were cool and interesting. I'm still terrible at it. Like, I'm not really that great of a networker per se. I feel like I could do way better, but yeah, if I think the work is really what always comes out. Like, if you're willing to work and you work with other people, it's only a matter of time before, people start noticing you, or they start asking you to come help with this, or they start recommending you for that. So, yeah, I would say just try to be positive. You know what I'm saying? And it's all just keep creating as much as you can, sharing it with people, and having, connections with people is really huge. And I get it. It's like, how do you start those connections? Just figure it out, whether they be forced through school or, or, you intern somewhere or whatever it is, you be somebody's studio assistant, like whatever it takes, like just have that hunger, that humbleness, and, you can create your own opportunities. Like I said, I really do feel like it's some electric energy in Midtown, like anything could just happen. So it's just a matter of like making that right connection. Like, it could really be huge for you.
Amanda, as someone who was kind of born in Atlanta, kind of spent your early life here and then left and then came back, how would you answer that question, as far as like thinking about Atlanta from the outside, coming back in, and kind of reestablishing yourself within the community?
Well, I'm actually still based in Brooklyn, but I think, talking more broadly about an artistic practice, and just adding to what Kristen said about, how do you establish yourself as an artist anywhere, really? I think it's about, standing in your truth. It's about, not just doing the things that necessarily make money. Obviously, we have to have sustainable practices, but, it's about creating work that is personal and meaningful, and in a way that, of course, others who can take what we've put out there in the way that we've been creating in these window spaces, and how our art has become part of the community. Anyone walking by can take a piece of it and reflect on it, and it's sort of like a reflection of their own experience. And I think when we create work that is personal, that is truthful to ourselves, we can have the most outsized impact.
Chioma, I saw you nodding your head a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think when Kristen was giving his answer,
Mm-hmm.
what would you want to add to that, if anything?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep creating regardless of what your situation may be, to put it out there, and just add a little bit of being uncomfortable when you do it, because I feel like that helps you grow. When I first moved to Atlanta, I was in grad school part-time, working at Starbucks part-time, and I would be painting when I found the time to. And I would, through trial and error, find like artist markets, or be searching for other Atlanta artists on Instagram and kind of trying to link up with them, or being inspired by them. And so I think that more than anything, like I completely agree to just create things that hold true to your personal truth. But I think it's really important to not let go of creating something. You are already an artist. No one can take that from you. And I feel that when it comes to Atlanta, if you want something, the city will give it to you. You just have to work for it. But it's there, it's waiting. And even if it's not on your time, I think that your time will come regardless. Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not on your time will come. I think that's I love that. I love that. Gene Kansas.
Yeah,
Give us some perspective on that, sir.
Well, as a non-artist, although an art lover, I took the question a little bit differently. I could see how if the artist here, which I'm envious of, your talent. I took it as like, how could I get involved in the arts community as like someone moving here? I want to be around like these incredible artists and go to these places and spaces. And we started off this conversation talking about like, in part, like driving through Midtown and what you miss by driving. There's like that saying, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, like, if you're driving, you know the destination. If you walk, you know the city. And I think it's just getting involved and being out there. And a fun, like, kind of Midtown moment on that. The High Museum, had these Friday night jazz nights and art openings at the same time. And I was sitting out there with my wife and like out on the lawn, and we're having like a glass of wine, and completely alone, like walks up Luke Wilson, who was shooting a movie in Atlanta. He just wanted to go find out. He wanted to be part of the arts community too. And it's like, yeah, the guy's a big movie star, but he just went in and like, it didn't take him too long to make some friends. Really, anyone can do that. And like we've heard a couple of different times tonight in a couple of different ways, Atlanta is like a very approachable city. You have access here. So I would just say, get out, walk, meet, wave to someone in a window, give them a thumbs up, and they're going to come talk to you.
I'll get a last word here to Fabian. I think you were trying to say something earlier, but I wanted to just give you a chance to sort of interject for a little bit as we close this out.
Yeah, man. If you're trying to like poke your head in Atlanta, I feel like the best thing to do is know who you are, and based on knowing the type of work you like, that'll give you a better sale as to where to float to find it. There's all types of scenes up around here, and some of them pass through the High Museum, some of them pass through ABV Gallery, some of them go to City of Ink. You know what I'm saying? These are all places you should go. But once if you know who you are, then if you're trying to like just get on the scene and just like see what's going on, you kind of just have to like roam and wander. There's art everywhere. There's like a scene like all over the place. And the more you become familiar with the work, the more you're familiar with who and where they kind of like do their work at, and then what type of things they're into. But if you're trying to do it yourself, I'm a fan of the bum rush. You know what I'm saying? Like kicking the door. So I look around and see what everybody's doing, and I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? I try and speak a whole other different language than what everybody else is doing, just because that's how you stand out. And Atlanta is one of them cities like, if it's cool, they'll come. You know what I'm saying? So you just gotta like be really just bold enough to just shoot your own shot. Look at how you're talking, and the people will find you.
That's a great place to leave it. I want to thank all of you for joining us for this first installment of Sidewalk Talk. And I promise next time we'll have to go up to the Vortex and get everyone some tater tots to make sure that we're all kind of well fed on the same page. So as you see, for those who are watching, this is a map of all of the artists' artwork. So please take that in. This map is also available on any of the Instagram pages for Midtown Arts. So please visit that page as well as visit Midtown Alliance, the website, to see this map as well. And while you're there, make sure you follow all of the artists, sign up for updates, and share this work with your network. And this is very important. I mentioned this is the first installment. We will have a follow-up episode on March 14th, where we'll take a deep dive into some real art conversations with these artists. Plus, we have a big announcement to make. So look out for a follow-up email to this event that will include a link to register for that next conversation. We invite you to please stay tuned and stay connected. And thank you for joining us. Thanks to all of our sponsors for supporting us in this moment. Really just thank you for helping making this happen. And we'll see y'all next time on the next episode of Sidewalk Talk.